And our character is
Oh,
a bit different in proportions. She's got a really big head. This is Riju. I don't know what she does in the game exactly, but she has a very large head. Interestingly, though, her halfway point is still at the exact same area of where, oh, let's admit, Karen. One moment while we get this going.
oh, this is fun now. Now we're having some fun. So Stephanie is foolishly calling me.
Oh. Call from Karen. Karen, can you possibly hear?
Stephanie, we're online. Join the anatomy class. You've tried to join a different class. We're here in anatomy. What day are you on? Yeah, be sure you're on the 15th because there's a whole slew of these, but it is anatomy on the 15th and we'll let you in. Betsy will. You shouldn't have to do anything except copy and paste that big old long thing. Was that Stephanie you were trying to let in?
No, this is Karen. Nope, we cannot hear you, Karen.
There's a green thing at the bottom of the street of the thing, Karen. Oh, the green thing was how I got in.
A green thing? Is there a green thing at the bottom?
Okay, so Stephanie's trying to get in and can't get in for some reason.
No green thing, says Karen.
No. We're letting people in right now. I have no idea.
Karen, did you join computer audio by chance?
That's why. Go to the calendar.
I think you have to join.
No, go to the JLI site. Go there. And if you don't go...
I'm going to mute Kristen for a second here because she's talking over me. I think you need to join computer audio. I think when you first sign on, it'll let you. I'm trying to find something where I can maybe invite you to join the audio. Do you have an internal microphone, Karen, or do you have an external microphone? Because I know for a while my computer wasn't recognizing my microphone, and that could be it. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording while we're working through our tech. So then with this remainder of the leg, normal people would have their knee pretty much in the middle, but because she's a cartoon character, she's got quite a bit more lower leg than she does upper leg, so I'm going to place her knees just a little higher than I normally would. Karen says hi, Kristen, in the chat box there.
Oh, okay. Now all we have to do is if Stephanie can get back on, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see if she can make it back in here. And And then we're going to add the arms, and something that a lot of beginning artists do is they just assume because their arms stick into their torsos, they'll start the shoulder just kind of floating out in there, but really the collarbone is where our arms are going to connect. So right on the center line there, I've got a dot which represents sort of the pit of the neck. And our collarbones are curved very much like a bow and arrow. Sometimes it's called Cupid's bow. So I'm going to draw half of a bow there and half of a bow there. This side has to be narrower because it's on the skinny side. And if you turn it sideways, you can see how it kind of looks like a bow with an arrow. Then here is where we're going to start our little circle for the top of our arm bones. And she has one hand on her hip. So we'll bend the arm bone out that way, bend it back toward her hip. And we'll just leave an oval right here for now. That'll be her hand later. And then her other arm is extended forward, so I'll go ahead and extend my line forward. How long should it be? Well, it should only be about as long as that line that we use to connect the legs to the torso. You can see over here just her fingers hang down a little bit. But in general, it'll be about that long. And we can put the oval right on the end. That's where her hand is going to be eventually. Now that we have our simplified skeleton, I'm just going to erase some of these guidelines that I don't need anymore. Since this is an anatomy class for mostly cartoon characters, I try to stay away from the scientific names, but if you're interested and want to know the name of a muscle, I will try to answer or quickly look it up. I've got some anatomy books off to the side here. Always happy to answer questions to the best of my ability. Now for the last 2 weeks, we've actually been using colored pencils to separate the different muscle groups. So if you have some colored pencils and you want to try that out, go ahead, or you can get even markers or anything you want. But it can, of course, be done with just regular pencil too. I'm going to go ahead and lighten up this skeleton just so that it doesn't confuse us with the muscle lines so much. If you don't have one of these erasers, you can also just lightly kind of half erase with a regular eraser. So our first simplified muscle is going to be the deltoid. Oops, I just said I was going to use real names. The shoulder muscle, which actually starts right on the collarbone here. I'll zoom in so you can see a little better. Starts over on the collarbone and connects to the arm. When you raise your arms up and down, flapping like a bird, this is one of the muscles that you're using. And the point of this muscle will separate the front of the arm from the back of the arm. The back muscles tend to bundle up a little closer to the shoulder muscle and the rest is straight. This is muscle all the way down. Same thing on this side, we have the point. Oops, I forgot to mark an elbow. Let's say her elbow's there. And then we have our shorter muscles in the back. Then with the lower arm, we need to know where is the thumb side and where is the pinky side. So for this hand on the hip, we know her thumb is going to be on this side. And the thumb side is usually going to have the larger curve of muscle. The pinky side is going to be less so. It'll be just a smoother curve. Now, if we were drawing the Hulk or Captain America or somebody like that, we would draw these muscles really exaggerated, but since this is a young queen who apparently doesn't bulk up and lift heavy weights, she's going to have some thinner muscles. Thumb side again down here. I'll have a slightly bigger curve. Pinky side we won't even be able to see, so it's going to be quite flat. And then for the neck, we have that center of the collarbone again. From there, we'll make a line that would go up to where the ears are. And if you're not sure where the ears are, you can just cut off a small oval on the side here, split that in half, and then split the face in half. And wherever those two lines cross, this is where the jaw and the ear would be placed. So that's where that line is going to go right up to, and then the other one's going to be on the other side, so we won't see as much of that. That's one part of the neck muscles. And then the other part go from the shoulder and flow inward. On her teeny tiny rib cage, maybe about halfway down, we're going to add in the arch of the rib cage, and this one's important because it tells us two things: where the muscles for the chest end and where the stomach muscles begin. So anything above this curve is going to tuck right up almost into the armpit. Chest muscles. And these all become stomach muscles. You can go straight down. Keeping in mind that the center line is still giving us a thicker side to the stomach muscles and a thinner side. Then there's a whole bunch of muscles in between, but the most important ones are right above the pelvic bone. There's a little muscle there that fills up the hips. And then the rest is back muscles over here. And we'll move down to the legs. So for the leg muscles, we're actually going to start way back up on that pelvic bone. Just to imagine that this is where the actual muscle inserts. Goes all the way down and flows right into the knee right there. And from the other side too, it's going to go around this way. Go right into the knee. So we've got this really elongated raindrop. Since she's in 3/4, we might see a little bit of the bum muscles back here. So we might have a curve if her hand wasn't there. I think her hand will cover it up. And there's a small section of muscles that connect into the torso from the leg. The knee is going to have some straighter lines since the bones are closer to the skin. In general, artists will put straighter muscles for any bony landmarks like knees, and then the curved muscles for, or the curved lines for the muscles. Then for the lower part of the leg, we've got a representation of our shin bone right here. The calf muscles are going to be bundled way near the top, and then down here get thinner. Same thing over here, bulk out, and then get thin. The thicker shin bone is the one that creates our ankle bone on the inside. And then we have that smaller support bone on the outside, which makes the other bump of our ankle, but it's a little bit lower. So we'll get this diagonal right there. We also tend to get a diagonal in the curves of the muscle in the opposite direction on the calf. So if your calves are looking a little bit like balloons that are not inflated all the way, like that, and they're too even on each side, you can change the shape up by just giving yourself a guideline and making that short line there, longer line, and then opposite on that side. So it'll give it a little bit more of a muscly feel. We'll do the same thing on the other leg, but it's a little bit more in profile. So our knee is going to be sideways. I'll just put a little angle there and then a flatter side for the back of the knee. So this first line we did that comes all the way in on the inside of the knee, we'll still have that, but it'll be slightly different since it's now just coming to the side. We'll still have that segment of muscle right there. It's like a little triangle. And in the sideways view, we get to see a little bit more of the thigh muscle bump. So this guy right there.
But that's actually a different muscle, right? It's one of those ones.
They're all thigh muscles. Like last time, if you remember, we did the inverted raindrop right here.
Yeah.
So it's that one in side view.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
I was thinking that was too many muscles to keep track of. Yep. So we would just do the outside shapes. So this floating out here needs to connect to something. That's going to be the back of the thigh muscles, which we haven't covered all that much, but we can put a straighter line back there. And then we'll repeat with the calf having mostly bone on the side for the shin. And then those muscles in the back are going to bulk up at the top and then almost reverse curve. Come down there. We don't get into the bones or the muscles of the feet too much just because there are so many. I believe over half of all of our bones are located in just our hands and our feet. The rest of our body's all the big ones. So there are 3 parts to the foot though. We've got a heel back here, which is going to curve outward. We have this section where shoelaces would go. I usually just call it the wedge. And then we have the toe portion. In a forward-facing view, we just get the wedge, which goes right in between those 2 ankle bones. And we add on a little bit of a toe portion. So these are just underlying muscles, and when we put flesh over the top of it, a lot of this will smooth out, depending on how much fat is in between the skin and the muscle. But if your character is looking too skinny, remember that there's going to be more to it than just this. For instance, this character is female and yet is missing her mammary glands. So from the center here, the flesh will hang down. So I just want to show you kind of quickly. You don't have to do this if you don't want to on your drawing. Just wanted to show you that a lot of these things get smoothed out or added to once you start putting on the rest of the flesh. And that these muscle structures are really a little, a little deeper underneath than we would think. So that's our review of the muscles, and now we're going to go ahead and draw the actual character, now understanding what's making some of these bumps. So you can slide your paper over or get a new piece of paper if you like. We're going to do this little picture here where she's sitting on her throne. So we're going to deal with some foreshortening and good stuff like that. You may also want to sharpen your pencil. It may be dull by now. And we'll start again the same way with just a circle about the size of a quarter. Her pose is going to go off to the right, so maybe plan for that and don't draw your head so close to the edge of the paper the way I did. Shift it over to the left so we'll have some room on the right. Her head is slightly tilted, so her nose line is on a diagonal. And we can add her chin to that. Very lightly her neck bone. We're going to erase that later. We just need to know that there is one. And she's resting her head on her hand, so her shoulders are actually still level. And we can give ourselves that collarbone. Or if you just want to skip to the bowstring line, you can do that too. And her arm will connect to that collarbone. I'll stick an oval where I want the hand to be, and then connect it back to the body. And for her rib cage, remember her rib cage is very, very small. She's a very petite lady. So it's only about the size of her head, inverted. And she's leaning a little bit, so her spine is going to curve a little bit to the right. I'll put on that Simplified pelvic bone. Try not to leave too much of a gap between these two. There really isn't that much space between the two even in real life. I think there's like maybe one hand's width between your rib cage and your pelvic bone. We don't need a whole lot of space there. And then we remember that we just cut off about 1/3 of that pelvic bone to start where the legs connect in. Now since she's sitting down, we're going to have some foreshortening where her leg is coming forward. So just to remind myself, I usually put a larger circle for the knee and a shorter line for the thigh bone. And her knees are smack dab together, so I can put the other knee right there and just trace it back to the thigh bone. Then she has her legs crossed. So the one in front is going to be this one. A little triangle on the end, or a little raindrop. Then the other one is going to tuck behind. Her other arm is going to be touching her chair. So we'll have her arm go out a little bit, maybe just above her hip bone there, and then stretch out straight, and there will be her hand. And if you want to give yourself a chair, you can lightly sketch in a horizontal line right underneath her knees there. Horizontal line for her hands and her elbow. And a couple of vertical lines here. Just real simple. If you find one hand is floating or her chair got uneven because of her elbow and her hand, just erase and even them out. No big deal. After you've got the whole simplified skeleton, we're going to lighten it up. And now we're going to approach this a little more from the outer contour. Like I was saying, the blue lines here, which are smoother, kind of fill it in. Even though we know the muscles are there and we could go through and draw them all, it makes for a really messy drawing by the end. So instead we can just skip straight to the outer contour, which we know there's a muscle there. It'll get straighter. We know there's a bump, and it'll go down to her hand. Just take care of the whole arm. We know the shoulder connects into the collarbone, so I can give a little mark to show the edge of that muscle. And then draw the back of her arm, which I know has most of the muscle on top. It gets a little straighter, hits the elbow, and is flatter on the pinky side. We'll do that same thing on the other arm. We might split it up into two because the lower part of the arm is going to block quite a bit of the upper arm. So we know the wrist is skinny, and then this would be the pinky side, so it's going to be a little flatter. And this is the thumb side, so it'll be a little bit more curved. We know the elbow is bony, so we use straighter lines. And for the upper part of the arm, we know shoulder muscle. You know, the back of the arm has most of the muscle grouped up near the body and then gets straighter on the way down. Before you move on, take a look at your two arms in comparison with one another. If one seems a little bulkier than the other, just make a little adjustment. Sometimes we're so caught up in the details that when we step back, we go, whoa, I didn't even realize I made one arm way more muscular than the other, or way longer, or one has too many fingers. It's definitely happened. I once drew a wolf with 5 legs in class, no joke. I was just so into it. I actually drew too many feet. So we've got the arms, and again, we know this shoulder muscle has that little mark on the front to show the edge of it. And we know that the chest muscle goes right into the armpit, so I can just start right away. We know she's a lady, so I can add chest volumes straight away. Kind of keeping in mind that the source of the flesh is about halfway down her rib cage. And we know there's a whole bunch of stuff that fills in that gap between the rib cage and the hips. Most of her thighs are going to be covered with clothing, so I'm going to skip the thighs for a moment and just jump down to what is visible, which are the knees. I'm going to use some straighter lines because I know the kneecap is bony. And then I know muscle at the top, skinnier at the bottom. And I know the muscle on the outside will start short and then long, reverse on the other side. I know that the ankle bone on the inside is higher, outside is lower. And I know that the wedge of the foot will start right in between the ankles, so you might even put a little mark. I've seen a lot of artists that will just put the tiniest of marks in between the ankles, bones, or ankle bumps. Get that foot started there. She's wearing shoes, so I'm just going to round that off and add the rest of the shoe later. For the other leg, we have straight lines for the knee. There's going to be some flesh, so I'm not going to start from that knee mark. I'm going to give it some space. Put in that muscle and tuck it right behind there. We might see her other shoe on the other side. That's kind of up to you. And something kind of new on this is the application of gravity, of pressure, that there's weight pressing down on this flesh. So the bottom of the leg here is going to be fairly flat to express that she does have weight, and we've got some smoosh happening to her flesh. And then the general shape of her leg would come up. Same thing on this one. General shape of the leg, since it's all going to be covered with clothing anyway. then the neck. Two parts to the neck. We've got our central V. We'll go up to the sides of the head. And we have this smooth connection from the neck to the shoulder. So for the hands, we've got a lot of bones on top. That's going to be a straight line. These straight lines continue on with the fingers. Long, medium, short. And then they'll be more rounded on the other side where there's more flesh, more fat pads. For the palm also, you'll have way more flesh near the wrist, and it gets narrower as you get to the knuckles. And then you can indicate more fingers. You don't actually have to draw all the fingers. You can just indicate that there's more back there. They're just kind of scrunched up. So just add a few lines on the inside, a few straighter lines on the outside. And try to get rid of my plot lines so you can see a little better. If you want, you can try to indicate a thumb with a reverse curve there. And it'll be tucked behind there so we won't see too much of it. And then for the other hand, it's mostly flat. So we have to remember that wedge thicker near the wrist and then gets thinner near the knuckles. We can add on a thumb, and we're going to keep it pretty flat where it's laying on the chair. And then just very, very subtly indicate that there's the rest of the hand there. Like I said before, she wears shoes, so instead of dealing with all the toes and that, we're just going to add a point. Over there, add another little point over there. And her skirt is held up by her belt, so we'll have a slightly curved line right at the top of her pelvic bone there. And one more line to show the bottom of the belt. The fabric at the back would just continue on the chair until it came to the edge, so maybe about mid-thigh you can have the fabric draped down here. On the top, we're going to go down the thigh and then have to go over the knee. Little reverse curve in the space between, and then over that knee. So all of this fabric, all of this fabric, all of this fabric. And her midriff is exposed, so we would see her belly button. You can put a little mark right above her belt. And we remember that we have the center stomach muscle, so if you want to put a few lines indicating those, you can put those too. And then her top, crop top. Is right there, and it's got this huge ornate necklace that follows her collarbone on the top here. So we'll just use our collarbone line, darken that in. Goes a little bit over her shoulders and comes around into a big fancy jeweled necklace. So we'll just stick with the basics here. There's about 5 minutes left. So I'd say let's finish her face. And then I think that's about as far as we can get to today. I'm going to zoom in on her face here. See if I can get both of them on. So her face isn't quite normal. She's got more of a wedge nose, large, wide-spaced eyes, and a very tiny mouth. If you'd rather just draw your own face, go for it. That's up to you. It's your drawing. I'm going to start with her eye on the eye line. A little petal shape or leaf shape. And then add some eyelids. And color in the iris. And straight above her eye, she's got very short eyebrows. More little leaf shapes. And from there, they come right down into a wedge nose.
She's not human, eh?
No.
Oh, okay, because that's a weird nose.
Yeah, that's more like a bird's beak, but that's what they gave her character. And then some very small lips underneath. And I'm just going to fit the bottom lip a little straighter on top and curved on bottom. I'll just darken in the lines that I want to keep. She's got great big elf ears, so if you want to stick a little half circle on each side. And then her forehead is quite large and her hair starts a little higher up than we normally would. And it's in some ornate hairstyle, so I'm just going to give the general shape of it here. With a ridiculously long braid in the back, kind of Rapunzel style. And that flowing off the chair as well. Oops, off camera as well. And it is 4:58. So that's probably going to do it for this lesson today.